which is the tougher duo to coach? Do you think it's PG-13 and Kawhi, or would you go Embiid and Simmons for Doc?
To me, it's Kawhi and PG. It's a tougher situation because of where they are in their careers. If you are Kawhi Leonard, you're a two-time champion and a two-time NBA Finals MVP. More importantly, you're a bit indifferent as a personality. You're very businesslike in your approach. You go out doing what you need to do as it pertains to doing your job. But in terms of galvanizing the troops around you, that's not who Kawhi Leonard is. You search around, you talk around NBA circles, that's what you consistently hear. In the case of Paul George, obviously Paul George is one of the more talented, two-way players in the NBA. He's a star, but unfortunately in his postseason career, particularly this postseason, that was not the case. And if you're Doc Rivers and you walked into that situation, you got guys that are veterans, they're established stars, they're set in their ways, they believe there's a certain way to do things and what have you. And as a result, it ended up being an incredible challenge, particularly when you consider what Doc Rivers had to absorb once Kawhi Leonard arrived. Kawhi Leonard wants Paul George. Kawhi Leonard forces the Clippers to trade the farm in order to acquire Paul George because that's the person that he wanted to play with. He was going to practice when he felt necessary. He was going to take games off in terms of game, load management when he wanted to. He was going to play when he wanted to during the regular season, of course, always available during the playoffs. But all of these things assist to what makes life difficult for a coach, particularly when you have an ownership making these kind of investments. That's problematic. In the case of Philadelphia, yes, Embiid and Ben Simmons are young, all right? And you got to get Ben Simmons to shoot the ball. He only attempted 7 3-pointers the entire season last year. Joel Embiid attempted 172. So one guy needs to get in the post more and stop having his big backside on the perimeter. And the other guy needs to develop a perimeter shot so he can be much more of a formidable threat. But they're both incredibly young. They both got a lot of promise and a lot of future ahead of them, and they're able, they're trainable to some degree, as opposed to being definitively set in their ways because they don't have any definitive set ways that has really, really worked for them. And I think that's the difference. That's why I say it's tougher to coach Kawhi Leonard and Paul George at this stage, particularly for Doc Rivers and what he had to deal with last year with the Clippers, than it would be for him to coach Embiid and Ben Simmons.
Well, let me just say this, because you covered a lot there. He had 1 year with Kawhi and Paul George. Doc did. 1 year. And in that one season, which is a weird bubble season, yes, everyone had to deal with it, but it was still like a strange season. It was considered an utter disaster that they got to Game 7 of the second round, right? So I don't know what would have happened going forward. I suspect they would have gotten better than they were this year, and they were damn good this year. He is now going to a situation where, yes, he has a point guard and a center. Yes, he has two amazing talents. I mean, Ben Simmons is, I thought, the best defender in basketball this year when he was healthy. But he's kind of like a poor man's LeBron James with a better handles but with no shot at all, right? And Embiid should be the best big man in the game. So he has a lot to work with there. But there's one huge difference. Kawhi and Paul George wanted to play together. In fact, Kawhi wasn't going to sign if they didn't trade for Paul George. It was a condition of his signing with the team. So when two guys want to play together, you're starting from a different point, even if their skills aren't perfectly complementary. Ben Simmons and Embiid never asked to play together. They got drafted into this situation. They were born into this situation. They both view it as their team. I'm sure they both want their own team. Ben Simmons, because he can't shoot, is put in the dunker spot in the playoffs, becomes a forward in the playoffs. Embiid, because he can, sometimes is used to stretch the floor, even though that's not always the way he should be used, and he doesn't quite shoot it well enough. And yet, if you put Embiid where he should be, does that slow up Simmons? So even though they play well together, like their team is really, really good when they're on the floor together, the fact of the matter is not only is it not a perfect fit, but the big point for me, Isiah, is they didn't ask for it. It doesn't seem to me that they want to be playing together, and Kawhi and Paul George did.
Max, Stephen A., both of you make excellent points. And Max, this isn't a brother thing, but I'm going to have to side with Stephen A on this one, not because it's his show and he's got the power and all that. I look at, from a coaching standpoint, I put on my coaching hat, and I look at George and I look at Kawhi. Both of them measure themselves by how many points they score, and they are measured by the general public by how many points they're scoring. So there's internal pressure within the team when you bring two scorers to a team that have never played together. And from a practice standpoint, they don't get much practice time together. And then from a physical conditioning standpoint, we all know the Clippers were not in great physical shape to sustain and win a 7-game tough series. So I think from a coaching standpoint, when I look at Embiid and I look at Simmons, they will be a better fit for Doc Rivers from a coaching standpoint. Simmons measures himself, and he is measured by how many assists and how well he defends and how complimentary he is as a basketball player. And he can dominate a game by being a complimentary player. Embiid is measured on his scoring and rebounding. So their skill sets fit. Now, culturally, and this is a big word, culturally, do they fit culture-wise in terms of their likes, dislikes, understanding of each other on and off the court? There's got to be some chemistry developed between these two young players, and they got to find a way not only to get along, but they also got to find a way to win together, because when they are at the top of their game, those two players are dynamic and unique in the league.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.